So I know, well, if we listen to these in the order that I wrote them, that I think I said after the 1-2-1-1 that we might be done, but I just couldn't resist doing a 1-2-2. So here we are. Um, Maybe this will be the last one. I started watching some film of Syracuse running a 2-3 and got a little excited about that, especially since everybody pretty much knows how to run the general 2-3 already. I think it would have been easy, but who knows? We'll see. Maybe this will be the last one. So the way I have this defense set up right now, I get the question sometimes, what's the difference between a 3-2 and a 1-2-2? And the difference is mostly the wings, as you'd expect by the fact that that's pretty much the only thing different in the numbering. The way I've seen it mostly is if you run a 3-2-2, these guys kind of deny the ball here, and this guy will sag off a little bit. Whereas the 1-2-2, it's more like these guys are jammed in here a little bit more, excuse me, and this guy will be a little tighter. So yeah, the top has a little bit more ground to cover here, and the wings pinch in a bit more because we want to prevent the drive more than we really care about them passing it for wing threes. So this defense is actually kind of similar to the pack line, because if you just look at it, this is exactly pretty much where the players would be in pack line. I mean, they'd be a little different because there's those specific rules about gapping towards the ball, but you know, this general like very tight in the paint kind of situation. So it's kind of similar in that, you know, there's a lot of pressure on the paint, but at the same time, the 1-2-2 is, I believe, the only zone where everybody has to cover the 3-point line. Normally, you know, in a 2-3, a 1-3-1, at least one of the players is not obligated to cover the arc, but in this one, everyone is. Another thing to mention is that unlike I have a picture in the document that gives the general ideas of the zone, and it'll be like, oh, this big guy takes this area over here. And our players are actually going to have a little more freedom than that. You don't have to stay on your side of the court. There will be times when I want you on the other side, but we'll get to that more a little bit later. So let's talk about every player's responsibilities. So for the top, you're honestly playing pretty similar to the 1-3-1. You know, if the ball's up at the top, that's your guy. And you're just going to pretty much cover the same as you would in a 1-3-1, and the same as you probably would in a 3-2 if the ball's in your area. If the ball is high on the wing, and actually this is something I should mention in general, any of these crossover areas, and I don't think I've written this in the document yet, so I'm probably going to, so hopefully it'll be there by the time you're listening to this. If there's any crossover areas, like this sort of like line here is kind of dividing these two players, if the ball gets there, you can trap that. So there's not really a passing off per se. Let's say this guy's on the weak side block or something, and this dude, you know, is getting covered out top, and he dribbles over onto the wing, which is this guy's area. Just trap that, you know. And if they have some bad spacing like this, we can kind of live with that, because you know, then let me back up and say, if as the wing you're worried about trapping because you're like, oh, there's two guys here, he can't cover both of them, that's okay, because you know, I mean, if he's already coming into this area, they'll have shitty spacing for these three guys because they're all standing, you know, on the same side of the lane line even. So, you know, by the time this pass gets there, you'll have him do a little stunt and recover, and then you'll be in front. So I'm really not too worried about it. So yeah, if the ball gets dribbled out of your zone, like on the perimeter, just trap it. And then, you know, if he kind of escapes over this way, okay, now let's get this guy out here again. Now the wing is like, okay, now he's firmly in my zone. So if you're never sure which of the two of you should cover it, both of you should cover it. And that's one of the few times when this defense gets a little aggressive. So let's get the ball back out top. Get these guys back in their areas. So if the ball, let's get back to the top's responsibility though. So I already said if the ball's like high on the wing, he might trap. If it's just regularly on the wing, then he'll just kind of drop down a little bit, kind of basic gap principles. You know, you don't need to be covering out here. If the ball is all the way down in the corner, or even in the low post, but somewhere down in this general area, then you take away the strong side post, because odds are this guy's going to be out here. He's going to be doing something with the passing lane, so you take away the strong side post, or high post, because, yeah, we wouldn't want, you know, something like there's a situation where they've got a guy kind of floating in here. We don't want him getting an easy pass there, so you could take that away. And I don't care if they chuck it back up top. We'll set the defense back up. So yeah, so make sure you sag down a lot. There might even be the rare occasion like this where maybe you're even a little inside that you don't want to get crazy and be all the way down at the basket, but you have a lot of freedom to really take away a lot of pretty much everything at this whole top area here, even going so far as to get down in the circle sometimes. So the top has a lot of freedom to mess things up. So let's talk about the wings. Your quote-unquote starting position is at the elbows, and that's sort of to give you the reminder that I really do want you to be playing inside a bit, packing it in like the pack line, and you're kind of gapping to protect the drive. Not to necessarily the same extent. So like if there's a situation like this where the ball's out top and you've got a guy on your wing, yeah, you could take a step or two closer to him. But if there is a guy in the high post in your area, that's who you're covering. So like, if they have a setup kind of like this, something like that, then I want you to be sort of, trying to cover him up. Of course, you want to stay on your side. And when I say your side, I mean like you want to stay on the side with this guy, especially because this is a hard pass to make inside because he's going to have to throw up between all four of these guys and over his man's head to get it there. So just, play his outside shoulder so that if if there's a pass to your guy, you can get there, and now the top's going to drop down to cover it. He's going to be dropping over, and the high post will be essentially denied. But yeah, if the high post is empty and there's a guy on your wing, you can, take a step or two closer to him. When the ball is swung to your man, so if your guy gets it on the wing, then similar to the top, you're just kind of covering him in man defense until, if he drives, obviously you're going to stay with him as long as you can. Unless, let's say he drives through and doesn't take a shot and does that Steve Nash thing where they come out on the other side. All right, at that point, you can lose him. But generally, if he's driving, you're staying with him. If he passes it, obviously, you go back into your off-ball defense. But if he dribbles, down all the way to the corner, that'll trigger a trap. And if he dribbles all the way up here, that'll also trigger the same little trap until he gets completely out of your zone. So you're just kind of playing man defense until he passes or dribbles it away. If the ball is on the other side, then I want you to take away the weak side high post or possibly zone up multiple players on the weak side. And it's even possible that you need to take the weak side low post. So what that means is like I said, when the ball's up top, let's use this guy as the weak side here, you might be taking a step or two towards your guy. But if there's a situation like, let's say now the ball's on the wing over here, now you really are in your starting position on that weak side elbow. And now he's probably taking the high side elbow. So we're kind of packing it in, maybe not that low on the wing for the top, but you're pretty much right there at the elbow here. If they have a really overloaded strong side, let's say it looks like this. Let's say they've got a post up, and so he's really dropping down, and there's a big guy that's saying, all right, I need to come all the way across the paint to cover him. We'll cover bigs in a minute. Maybe you drop back a bit because you're saying, okay, these two guys are on the weak side, and I have to zone them up. And let's say they get a kind of a double post look going on down here. Maybe you have to help all the way down to this and say, I can't let that pass get through, because then they'd have a sort of weird 2-on-1 here with this guy in the middle, even though that would be a hard pass. So yeah, you just want to muck up this passing lane and say, all right, if you're going to swing it all the way up here, that's fine. I can get there easily in time. So you may have to help all the way down to the weak side low post, but generally, if the ball's, especially if the ball's in the corner, you could be like, okay, yeah, sure, I can help down here. I don't care. So yeah, generally, if the ball's on the other side of the court and you're the wing, you're dropping down at least to the elbow, maybe lower, and only moving back out if there's a strong overload that side and you're the only guy back here. So let's talk about the bigs, and this is one of the few times where I'm not using the black cubes to indicate bigs. I'm just doing it wings so we don't have 3 blue up top. It's just a little clearer, I think, this way. Let's get a 5 out again. So the bigs are obviously responsible for the low posts on their side. That's standard in a 3-2. But what's different from a 3-2 is in some 3-2 schemes, these wings will cover everything from like the mid wing all the way down to the corner. But we're not doing that. In our scheme here, the bigs are going to cover all the way up to the corner because we have some pretty mobile bigs. Most of our bigs played, wings in high school. So I'm sure they're more than capable of covering all the way out there. We don't have any hulkers. So if the ball gets out here, you know, you want to be stepping out a bit. Same as in pack line, really. You know, you're kind of gapping a little bit. And then, you know, if the ball gets to the corner, that's your guy. And same general things as you would do in pack line for that sort of scenario. I'm going to talk about post-ups in a minute, so I'm not going to cover them now, even though that generally affects bigs. So one other thing I'll say, and I briefly mentioned a minute ago, is if the ball's all the way in the corner, well, let me say this. The ball's on the wing, obviously this guy's going to move out a bit. So this guy's going to sort of come over and take the middle almost. I mean, it depends where the spacing is. Like, yeah, in this particular scenario, we'd probably have a setup kind of like this. So you still kind of want to be over here because you are the rim protector then. And like I talked about at the beginning in our basic rotations video, lowest man on the weak side, you know, protects the rim in a drive situation, and this guy would zone up. So you don't have to be like, I need to be stretched all the way out here. But maybe you don't want to come all the way to the middle yet. Maybe you want to kind of lurk, you know, still here saying, all right, I can easily step in front of that on a drive, but I don't want to give him an easy pass over here. But let's say the ball's in the corner or something. Now, yeah, you can come all the way over to this side, especially if there's a guy in this low block. You pretty much have to do this because obviously this guy is generally responsible for this block, but he's got to cover the corner right now. So you got to come over and help out. So you can even go all the way to the other post on the other side. So really anywhere from the opposite post to the corner is all your responsibility. And like I said, if the ball's kind of in between you and the wing, you can trap. So let's talk about post-ups while we're on the topic of big men. So if the ball gets to the high post, like I talked about, it really shouldn't because these guys should be taking it away pretty heavily. But, you know, maybe they're running a clever set or something where they've got a guy, you know, let me get something like this. I'll spread these guys out a little more. Where they swing the ball here real quick right as this guy's flashing up and they have another guy going back door or something like that. So right as he comes out, they manage to get into the high post. So whatever the case, the ball gets to the high post. Basically, whoever's closest, one of the bigs should come up and take it. And then the other guy's going to kind of play the middle, more to the strong side, obviously. We don't really want that. However, we kind of end up in a 1-3-1 configuration here, but it's not great to have the ball in the high post in this defense because now you could have cutters coming from either direction, and this one guy can't really cover both. It's acceptable in a 1-3-1 defense because you generally have a guy standing here permanently, so the ball doesn't really get to the high post in the first place. But it is possible in the 1-2-2 that the ball gets to the high post. So if it does, one thing that's really important to me is that the wings do not trap it. I mean, like, if the guy is out here and he catches it, maybe. But if the ball's anywhere, like, inside these lines, do not trap it. Because I can't tell you how many times last year, just running the 1-3-1, we'd have a guy catch it in the high post. Well, I mean, that didn't happen that often, but it seems like every time they caught it in the high post, this guy would crash down, something would be happening on the weak side to distract this guy, and boop, backdoor cut for a layup every time. So if you're a wing, you do not trap that. The only guy that can trap that is the top, if he thinks that it makes sense. And he can come down while you guys, you know, watch cutters and you kind of maintain your area. He can come down and trap. And, you know, if they throw it back out for a 3, that's fine. We'll recover, and now hopefully you will now come down and protect the high post. And he'll get able to drop back down, and we'll be back in our defense, and now hopefully the ball won't get to the high post again. But the wings don't trap. Only the top can trap the post, and the closest big is the one that comes up and covers it first. If it's kind of in the middle where someone catches it, the bigs need to communicate. In some schemes, they will know in advance which one is going to take the top every time, even going so far as to say if it's over there, this guy will even take it. That's not necessary. I think as long as you guys are communicating well, it should be easy to figure out, you know, so you might just be like, I got it, and that's as far as you need to go. So in the low post, you want to front it every time, which may seem a little weird, but when you realize that we have two low post players, it's actually not that weird, because you're not worried about the ball going over your head because the other guy's always right behind you. So let's take a look at what that would look like. Let's get more of a 2-3 alignment here. Now let's say the ball is kind of high up on the wing. You want to front this. And part of the reason is because, like I said, that's a hard pass to make. And if the ball gets between the two of you, the two bigs, that's an automatic trap right here. But it's a very difficult pass to make, as opposed to, you know, if you just play them normal post up and they get the pass here, that's a good post up. So this should prevent the post from happening. And the other thing is, if you're fighting underneath this guy, this corner's open all day, and we just can't allow that. So you want to front here. Now, if the ball, let's say it's a kind of a situation like this where these guys are close to each other, you might not be wanting to wrestle with position down here, because remember, this guy's probably rotated over to the middle of the paint. So you can kind of cheat out a little bit. Say like, all right, if you want to throw this, it might look open, but like I said, if it goes between us, that's an immediate trap. So maybe you don't want to throw that pass, and I'm still close enough that I can get out to the corner, and this guy will shift over. He might shift down a little bit, and then, you know, we're all good to go here. So yeah, the basics for the post is front the low post every time, trap it if it gets between you, but otherwise it's fine. If there is a situation that ends up like, let's say this is kind of the setup they got going, and we get like a true post up over here somehow, the wing might be able to help if he sees fit. Maybe he feels this guy cutting, so he stunts down. Well, because keep in mind, if the ball's down here, this guy's going to be covering over a bit. So we're probably going to have a setup like this. The wing might be like, well, I don't really need to stand around here. I'm going to help out in double, and, you know, if necessary, me or even the top could help out in a desperate situation to scramble. So the wing can occasionally dig down on a low post, but I don't think it's likely that too many people will be posting us up. So let's talk about the fun part of this, and that's going to be a 3/4 court press, and this is what Villanova runs frequently, and they get a lot of turnovers out of this. So it's actually kind of similar to the 1-2-1-1, except that's a full court press kind of thing that they have going on, where this is more of it's a little looser. It's like a 3/4, like I said. So I'm just going to set these guys up kind of randomly. So what we want to do is have this top is going to start somewhere around the free throw line, and just take away this whole middle area here. Obviously, like, if there's a guy standing there, nobody's going to try and catch the ball here. They'll just wander themselves up to the corner, especially because they can see that, unlike the 1-2-1-1, I mean, we don't have a trap run, so like they could catch it here, and there's no way you guys are going to get there in time before he gets back, so they probably will be fine going to the corner, and they'll just do it automatically. So yeah, the top starts around the free throw line. These guys will generally play, you know, like a couple steps over half court. These guys are usually a little above the 3-point line, but it depends. If a guy's sitting here, maybe this guy's dropped back a bit. You know, maybe he's feeling the ability to come up a bit. So it's kind of like, it's not a man concept, but, you know, you can move around a bit on the back end based on where you are, as long as you're still maintaining your zone. You know, if there's two guys over here, you don't want this guy coming all the way over here, but you might get something like, you know, something like this. So basically the idea is, when this ball gets passed in, instead of the 1-2-1, which is like a hard trap which tries to seal you off at the top and force you to like put the ball on the floor, we don't necessarily try to do that. We really just want him to pick up his dribble before we do anything. So this guy, the strong side wing, is going to pick him up pretty much as soon as he gets the ball. Maybe you wait a bit because you don't want to get blown by. And this guy is really focused on preventing the ball reversal. So I watched some videos of Villanova coach Jay Wright, and what he talked about is attacking small and retreating big. And that basically means, you know, you're hunched over and you look like you're in a sprinter stance when you're coming over here when you're the top. But, you know, you're just kind of tricking them into thinking a trap is coming. So you'll take a step or two in, all small like, but then, you know, you step back, you put your hands wide, and you're preventing any passes. And that doesn't mean you have to be like zigzagging at the guy like a madman, but it just means like you're kind of stunting at him until you get close enough, until you think like, oh no, we actually can just trap here. So you're really trying to prevent any centering passes back to the middle. In this scenario, this weak side wing is pretty much doing the same thing that the the middle would do in the 1-2-1-1, and that he's just kind of zoning up the weak side players, and he's kind of the one that's lurking around. Sometimes they'll spread out a little bit better like this, and maybe it'll be more like this, and you're going to say, all right, if you throw it back there, that's fine. Again, like, if the ball gets centered, we'll just cover it, and we'll press and try to get a 10-second violation. So yeah, that's kind of the generals of the 3/4 court press, and you just kind of fly around a bit. These guys generally aren't going for steals, but like, if this guy sprints down here and outruns his dude and they toss something up like way in the air, yeah, you could try and go for a steal. But generally, you guys are just, trying to stay back here, keep an eye on everybody. So there is a version of this that can be run as a half-court press, and it's kind of similar. You're probably going to set it up something like this. So the setup is similar, but everybody's moved back, like, maybe 10 feet. So these guys are going to kind of linger around here, and the idea is to force the ball again. Like, if two guys are coming up with the ball like this or something, they'll be happy to not go to the middle. Most people aren't going to try and just beat a guy in the middle. They'd rather just pass it off and go somewhere else. So the idea of the half-court trap is simply, as soon as this ball crosses half-court, everybody just, these two immediately trap. So the top's job is just to kind of like, you're almost playing sideways, like your arms are going this direction, and you're just, staying not on his hip necessarily, because you don't want to pressure him just yet, because that might make him pass it. But you want to, stay a couple feet away from him, and you're just kind of going along with him and saying you're not getting any closer to the middle. If anything, you got to go closer to the sideline. And then as soon as he crosses half court in this corner here, this guy who's maybe 10 feet from the corner will sprint up. This guy will sprint up. Maybe we get a denial here, something like that. These guys will start to get more aggressive too. So maybe he was maybe there's a guy in the middle, he runs here, and now this guy's zoning up the weak side. So just, you spring a quick trap in the corners of the half court. So similar to the 3/4, but just moved back a little bit. So let's give a quick recap of the whole defense. So it's kind of similar to the pack line in that we're protecting the paint quite a bit. The top is going to take the point of attack and guard that top area, and he's going to be ready to drop to the strong side high post if necessary. The wings start at the elbows here, and they obviously have to come out and cover the wing when necessary. But when the ball's on the other side, they're going to protect their the high post on the weak side, whereas he'll take the strong side and maybe even drop down a little bit towards the low post area on the weak side if necessary. The bigs are going to take the low post on their side, obviously. They got to defend out to the corner, and on the weak side, they might also have to defend over to the strong side, low post. And then for post-ups, if it gets high, then, the big on that side and the top might trap. And in the low post, we want to front all the post-ups. So that's everything.